You've probably heard the words liberty, equality, human rights thrown around a lot. They're kind of the foundation of our modern world. But have you ever stopped to think about where those big ideas actually came from? Well, today we're diving headfirst into the story of the French Revolution. It was a messy, chaotic, and incredibly important series of events that literally changed the world and gave us the political rulebook we still use today. Okay, just picture this for a second. It's the morning of July 14th, 1789. You wake up in Paris, and the entire city is on edge. The air is just thick with fear and anger. The king has moved troops into the city, and rumors are flying everywhere that they're about to start shooting. Thousands of people, terrified but furious, start gathering in the streets. They decide they have to arm themselves. They have to fight back. The fuse has been lit. And that fuse leads directly here, to the storming of the Bastille. Now, the Bastille wasn't just any old prison. It was this massive, looming fortress that represented the king's absolute power. So when the people tore it down, it wasn't just about getting weapons. It was a statement. This was the explosion. So, how on earth did it come to this? How does a whole society get to the point where they're tearing down a fortress brick by brick? Well, that's what we're going to unpack. To really get it, we have to rewind a bit. We need to look at what France was actually like before all this chaos. They called it the old regime, and believe me, it was a powder keg just waiting for a spark. So much of this story, like a lot of stories, really starts with money, or in this case, a massive lack of money. When King Louis XVI came to the throne, France was already drowning in 2 billion livres of debt. And then, what does he do? He throws another billion on top to help out with the American Revolution. So France is basically broke, and the only solution anyone can think of, you guessed it, raise taxes. So the big question is, who's going to pay for all this? Well, French society back then was divided into 3 groups or estates. You had the first estate, the clergy, and the second estate, the nobility. Together, they were less than 3% of the population, but they owned about 35% of the land and, get this, paid almost no taxes. That left the third estate, which was literally everyone else. 97% of the people paid 100% of the taxes. You can see how that's not going to work out for long, right? Yeah, people at the time knew just how unfair it was. There was this popular drawing going around that said it all. The nobleman is the spider, the peasant the fly. It gives you a real sense of how people felt, like they were just caught in a trap, being drained by this system of endless taxes and old-school feudal obligations. And if that wasn't bad enough, on top of all that injustice, people were literally starving. France's population was growing fast, but a series of bad harvests meant the price of bread, the main thing people ate, just went through the roof. This is what we call a subsistence crisis. It's a fancy term for a simple, terrifying reality. People could not afford to eat. So you've got this society that's broke, unfair, and hungry. Now, into that mix, throw in some really powerful new ideas. I'm talking about Enlightenment thinkers, guys like Locke, Rousseau, and Montesquieu. They started asking some really big questions, like, why is the king in charge anyway? And shouldn't people have a say in their own government? These ideas spread like wildfire, and they gave people the words to describe exactly why they were so angry. Okay, so you see all the pieces, right? The debt, the crazy inequality, the starvation, the new ideas. It's all swirling together. Something has to give. The whole country is basically a ticking time bomb. And the king, Louis XVI, he's getting desperate. He needs cash, and he needs it now. So he does something that hadn't been done in 175 years. He calls a meeting of the Estates General, bringing all 3 groups together. He thought, hey, I'll just get them to approve some new taxes, problem solved. What he didn't realize was that he was about to open Pandora's box. And right away, they hit a wall. It was all about how they were going to vote. The old way was super unfair. Each estate got 1 vote. So the clergy and the nobles could just team up and vote down the third estate, 2-to-1 every single time. But the third estate, they said, no way, we have way more people. We want 1 vote for each representative. The king said no, and just like that, everything ground to a halt. So what do? They get locked out of their meeting hall, but they don't go home. Instead, they find the nearest available space, which just happened to be an indoor tennis court, and they take an oath. Right then and there, they declare they are the real government, the National Assembly, and they swear they won't leave until they've written a whole new constitution for France. This was a huge deal. They were basically telling the king, you're not in charge anymore, we are. So after the Bastille is stormed in Paris, news spreads and things get wild out in the countryside. A panic that historians call the Great Fear just sweeps across the nation. Peasants start attacking the mansions of the nobility, burning the records of all the old debts and duties they owed. It was chaos. And the National Assembly, seeing this, makes a jaw-dropping move. On August 4th, they get together and abolish the entire feudal system. Just gone. Overnight. Okay, so they've torn down the old system. Now what? What do you build to replace it? They had to figure out what they actually stood for. And as you'll see, their grand ideas about equality, well, they didn't exactly apply to everyone. And this is what they came up with. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. Honestly, this is one of the most influential documents ever written. It laid out these incredible ideas, that all men are born free and equal, that the government gets its power from the people, not a king. I mean, these words would echo around the globe for centuries. But, and this is a really big but, there was a catch. Who exactly counted as a citizen? The new constitution they wrote in 1791 made this distinction between active citizens and passive citizens. To be active, to be able to vote, you had to be a man over 25 who paid a certain amount in taxes. Everyone else, all women and poor men, they were passive, no vote. So that big promise of equality, it was already starting to crumble. This hypocrisy, plus the fact that all the other kings in Europe were getting really nervous and threatening to invade, just pushed the revolution into a much more extreme, much more violent direction. The whole idea of working with the king was about to be thrown out the window. What came next was a republic, but one born from war and fear. And from here, things start moving incredibly fast. France goes to war with Austria and Prussia. This makes people even more radical. A political club called the Jacobins leads a massive uprising, storms the king's palace, and throws the whole royal family in prison. They hold new elections, and this time all men over 21 can vote. And the first thing this new government does, it abolishes the monarchy completely. A few months later, in January 1793, the man who is King Louis XVI is executed for treason. But amidst all this chaos, this super radical Jacobin government did something truly amazing. In 1794, they voted to abolish slavery in all of France's colonies. This was a huge deal, extending that idea of liberty to hundreds of thousands of people. It was a truly revolutionary moment, even though, sadly, Napoleon would later bring slavery back. At the same time, though, to protect the revolution, the Jacobins, led by a guy named Maximilien Robespierre, started what we now call the Reign of Terror. Basically, if you were even suspected of not supporting the Republic, you could be arrested, put through a quick trial, and almost certainly be sent to the guillotine. It was a period of incredible fear and paranoia. And this really shows you the debate that was raging inside the revolution itself. You had people like the journalist Camille Desmoulins saying, wait a minute, liberty is supposed to be about happiness and justice? How can we build that by killing everyone? But on the other side, you had Robespierre, who argued that in a revolution, terror is a form of justice. It's swift, severe, and necessary. In the end, as you can probably guess, Robespierre's side won. And Desmoulins? He ended up being executed too. Eventually, the terror got so extreme that it turned on itself. Robespierre was executed, and the killing finally stopped. But France was a mess. The government was unstable, and that chaos created the perfect opportunity for a new, powerful figure to step onto the stage, someone who would claim to save the revolution while at the same time killing it. So after Robespierre, a weak government called the Directory takes over. It's not very effective, and it creates a huge power vacuum. And who steps into that vacuum? A young, ambitious, and brilliant general named Napoleon Bonaparte. For years, he rises through the ranks. And then, in 1804, he does something nobody saw coming. He crowns himself Emperor of France. Just like that, the Republic was over. And that leaves us with this really tough question, doesn't it? The French Revolution gave us some of our most cherished ideas: liberty, human rights, the notion that the people should rule. It inspired countless struggles for freedom all over the world. But it also gave us a blueprint for modern political terror, the idea that it's okay for the state to use extreme violence to achieve its goals. It has this dual legacy, both incredible and horrifying. And honestly, it's a contradiction that we are all still trying to figure out today.